good, YouTube? It's your boy 3 Stacks, and you know I keep it 3,000. But today we got a YouTube video, cop tracked to Cannibal's kitchen, then vanished. True crime documentary. That's enough said. It's Tuesday, so it is time for some true crime. So let's get right into it.
Is there anything you can tell me about what you did between the 1st and the 7th before you were arrested?
When officers forced their way into the flat at the Peabody estate in South London, the first thing that hit them was the smell. It was chemical, acrid, thick in their sinuses. Bottles of acid were scattered across the hallway. The bathtub was filled with a blue-green liquid, thick with floating pinkish globules. In the oven, pools of melted fat had congealed. On the stove sat a pot, inside it a partially cooked rib, and nearby some chopsticks, used. When police opened the bin bag next to the stove, what the officer found would leave them requiring therapy. The man who had answered the door said almost casually, "I flushed the flabby bits 5 minutes ago. Satan told me to." What happened in that flat defies all logic. By the way, this is Dark Case and you can call me Jack. I bring you true crime documentaries and other things that you may later regret knowing. Please do join the amazingly supportive Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now, and make sure that you have all notifications turned on. The Dark Case newsletter is free and takes just 5 seconds. On the surface, Gordon Semple had everything under control. He'd been a police officer for over 30 years. He was now 59 years old, close to retirement, and deeply respected within the Metropolitan Police. But there was a side of Gordon that few people knew about. On April 1st, 2016, he was working, but as a senior officer, he had the freedom to manage his own schedule. He used that freedom to arrange a meetup. His phone data later showed what he was truly focused on that day, and it wasn't work. He was messaging with a stranger, planning something extreme. By the time he was captured on CCTV, walking towards a block of flats in Southwark, his eyes were locked firmly on his screen. He was typing, coordinating. He was heading towards the home of a man named Stefano Brizzi, and this was definitely not a work meeting. Even though the two would converge, PC Gordon Semple was in many ways the complete opposite of Stefano Brizzi. Born in Inverness and raised with traditional values, Gordon had dedicated more than 30 years of his life to public service. He was calm and composed. He ran marathons and was known for being involved in charity work. A colleague described him as a Dixon of Dock Green character, which was a nod to the classic British police officer.
I ain't gonna lie, I don't know if I'm tripping, but his smile low-key look like Pennywise. I ain't gonna lie, I'm used to their insanity, so like, this like no music in the background, this don't make it a little bit more creepy, but let's get back into it.
Someone who knew the rules, enforced them with care, and brought a feeling of stability to his team. Outside of work, he was described as warm and generous. He had a long-term partner of over 2 decades and a strong network of friends and family. And then there was Gordon's private side. Behind closed doors, Gordon was using a dating app, and he was using it to arrange discreet encounters with other men. And these weren't just casual dates, they were parties or sessions that involved illicit substances. I've been trying to think of language I'm actually able to use here, but let's put it this way, his taste was far from vanilla. These sessions typically involved high-risk behaviour, dangerous power dynamics, and a mix of online anonymity and in-person vulnerability. But back to Friday, April 1st, 2016. Gordon was on his way to Stefano's flat. The messages between them revealed that they had arranged what Brizzi would later describe as a hot, dirty, sleazy session. The apartment was an old brick building nestled off Southwark Street. It was small, quiet and easy to overlook, but behind the door of flat 23, Stefano had prepared the space for more than just a casual meeting. Bottles of substances lined the bathroom, cleaning tools were placed nearby, a webcam sat on the table, prepped and ready to go. The two men greeted each other, and what followed was, by Stefano's account, a consensual encounter that took a sudden and tragic turn. Stefano claimed that Gordon had been wearing a dog leash and a mask. He said Gordon's time on this earth was accidentally ended during this session.
Hold on. So his kink turned into a crime. I never really understood. You know what? I don't judge. Well, I'm gonna judge him because he's a murderer. Real, I'm gonna judge him because he's a murderer, but...
He said he then panicked, that he tried to resuscitate him, that Gordon had never used their agreed-upon safe word, and that's where it all must have gone wrong. But Stefano's next steps weren't those of someone reacting in shock. Instead of calling for help, he began cleaning up, covering, hiding, and in the following hours and then days, Stefano Brizzi made choices that would shock even seasoned investigators. What actually happened inside that flat between Gordon Semple's arrival and the moment that his time was brought to a close will most likely never be fully known. However, Stefano always insisted that it was an accident. He said he was shocked, which led him to use more substances, and then he sat and waited and thought, and then his panic turned into planning. Over the next few days, Brizzi took methodical steps to hide what had happened. He spent days trying to make the body disappear, inspired, he said, by the very show he had been watching so obsessively. That show was Breaking Bad. He purchased new supplies, cleaning agents, buckets, a metal sheet, and all of this was caught on CCTV at a local hardware store. He had kept Gordon's body in the flat for nearly a week. During this time, he had researched chemical methods for breaking down organic matter, and so he filled the bathtub with corrosive liquid. He then dismantled the body and placed parts of it into the bath. He also used the oven, a blender, and other kitchen utensils. As you can imagine,
I ain't gonna lie, bro. Like, I can't, bro. It's like, why even cover it if it was a so-called accident? Well, I mean, obviously, it probably wasn't an accident. Oh, I'm tripping. I forgot about the title. That joint for sure says Cannibal's Kitchen. Let's get back into it.
And during this time, the smell was becoming unbearable. Neighbours had assumed it was a plumbing issue, or maybe some spoiled food. No one imagined the real source. When officers arrived on April 7th to check on the property, they were immediately struck by the chemical stench seeping through the door. They knocked, waited, got no response, and then forced entry. Inside, they later found a scene that would be described as grotesque beyond comprehension. The soft pink, pale globules that were floating in the bath were later confirmed to be human tissue. A bin liner held a partial spine. A bucket contained bone fragments, and part of a head was recovered. The oven was still warm, and it contained remnants of melted human fat. PC Charlotte Edwards, one of the officers on the scene, said the floor was in fact covered in a thin layer of human grease, and a tea strainer also held remains. The flat looked more like a scene from television than something real, and in the middle of it all was Stefano Brizzi. He was composed, polite, and forthcoming. He didn't deny that something terrible had indeed happened. He actually told them straight away, "I've killed a police officer." When asked why, he said a voice told him to. "Satan told me to kill," he repeated. "Kill, kill, kill." He admitted to being high when all of this happened. He admitted to trying to clean up the evidence. He even joked, strangely detached, that his bathtub had been unusable for days. During interviews, he broke down occasionally, but his details were consistent. He never once denied his actions. He only insisted that the death itself had not been intentional.
Is there anything you can tell me about what you did between the 1st and the 7th before you were arrested?
No comment.
When police recovered Gordon's badge, it was buried in the trash. All of his belongings had been scattered or discarded, and yet, Brizzi seemed almost relieved, as if the weight of the week had finally collapsed on him. When asked what his plan had actually been, he said, "I was going to finish the job today." And maybe he would have, if the terrible smell hadn't brought his neighbours to the door first. Once Stefano was in custody, the investigation quickly expanded beyond just his flat. The search for Gordon Semple's missing remains led officers to local drain pipes, to bins, and the nearby River Thames. Not far from Bermondsey Wall, a member of the public discovered a foot. DNA confirmed that it was Gordon's. Body matter was also found inside drainage systems linked to Stefano's building, proof that his efforts to dispose of evidence had extended through the plumbing of the building itself. Inside the flat, investigators documented every grim detail. Chemicals carefully arranged, a laptop showing past episodes of Breaking Bad, and on multiple kitchen utensils, DNA linked to the victim. One of the most disturbing discoveries came in the form of a bone recovered from a bin. It had a bite mark. Stefano insisted that he didn't remember doing it, but expert witnesses confirmed that it had happened and that the mark could even be matched to his own dental impressions. He told officers that the days following Gordon's demise had become nothing more than a blur, that he'd used more and more substances to cope with what had happened, and that somewhere in the chaos, he convinced himself that he might actually get away with it. And he wasn't actually delusional, not in a clinical sense. He was in fact eerily lucid, but his judgment was profoundly impaired, twisted by addiction, paranoia, lack of sleep, and the influence of disturbing media. Stefano Britz's trial opened at the Old Bailey in late 2016. He pleaded not guilty to murder, but admitted to obstructing a coroner in the execution of their duty. His legal team painted a picture of a man broken by addiction, a former professional who had fallen into the depths of compulsive behavior. His defense rested on a single claim. Stefano suggested that a health condition, perhaps asthma or a heart issue, had contributed to what had happened. However, he really played himself there, because one pathologist noted that Gordon's internal organs were never recovered, making it impossible to confirm certain causes. But other experts pointed to clear signs of throttling. Gordon had a fractured hyoid bone in the neck, and there was bruising consistent with prolonged pressure. The court was also shown CCTV footage of Stefano buying cleaning materials. They also heard testimony from a witness referred to only as CD, who had arrived at the flat on the night of the incident, expecting a group gathering of men. He said that Stefano had greeted him at the door and said that the party was now cancelled and that someone inside wasn't feeling well. The witness thought that someone had been sick, so he left. Horrifyingly, Stefano rescheduled the party for the following week. All the while, Gordon's body remained in the flat. During the trial, Gordon Semple's family had remained composed, dignified, but the weight of what they had endured was impossible to ignore. His older brother, Ronald Semple, delivered a statement on behalf of the family. He described Gordon as a gentle, caring man, someone who had spent over 3 decades in uniform, serving his community. He had been a loving partner, a devoted brother, an uncle, a man who brought people together through charity runs and through friendship, through quiet acts of kindness.
Sorry, bro. I'm sorry for saying you look like Pennywise. That was actually very rude of me. I'm sorry. I didn't know that you were the victim. I messed up. I'm sorry, but this is, like, terrible. Like, I'm not one to kink shame, but, like, you feel me? And not only did he get killed, but he got 8, bro. He got 8. No Diddy. In this case, it's low-key a little bit of Diddy. I ain't gonna lie.
The news of what happened to Gordon had left the family devastated, but the details, the cruelty, the deliberate nature of it was something that no family could ever truly process. And the judge acknowledged this pain. He told the court, the officers who entered the flat encountered something no amount of training could have prepared them for. I commend them both. Turning to Stefano, he added, the regret you now express for Mr. Semple's end must be seen against what you did over a number of days to his body. The Crown Prosecutor went even further. She called Stefano an evil and calculating man, someone who lied to the police, lied to the court, and only revealed the truth when no other option remained. Detective Chief Superintendent Peter Ayling summed it up in a single line. Britz's actions were grotesque beyond comprehension. I'll warn you now that the sentencing coming up is not the end of the story, so stick around until the end of the video for yet another twist. Perhaps the most shocking moment of the trial came when the prosecution detailed how far Britzy had actually gone. His own words caught on video, "I was going to finish the job today." Prosecutor Crispin Aylett QC called Stefano's actions cold and calculating. He told the jury that this was not a man reacting to panic, but this was someone who had made deliberate, horrifying choices. And the jury agreed. After 5 days of deliberation, Stefano Britzy was found guilty of murder by a majority of 10-2, and the judge did not mince his words. He described the case as one with terrible...
10-2? What two people said that he didn't commit that murder? Send them to me right now.
...features, and he sentenced Stefano Britzy to life in prison with a minimum term of 24 years. And so
wait, minimum term of 24 years? So you're telling me bro killed somebody and ate them and he gets minimum 24 years?
Delivered its sentence, life in prison, a minimum of 24 years before being eligible for parole. But in the end, Stefano Britzy wouldn't serve even a fraction of that time. For Gordon's family, and for the officers who responded to that flat, closure remains elusive. Stefano Britzy was transferred to HMP Belmarsh following his conviction. This is a high-security prison, known for holding some of the country's most dangerous offenders. But Stefano wasn't like most inmates. He stood out. He was highly educated, fluent in multiple languages, and he was unaccustomed to the noise, the structure, and the sheer monotony and cruelty of prison life. The jury from his inquest later described him as an atypical prisoner. They noted his high intellect, his frustration with the rigid rules of incarceration. At first, prison staff were cautious. Stefano had made disturbing statements during his trial. He had, after all, confessed to hearing voices. He was initially placed on a special watch, but over time, the monitoring was relaxed. But he was taken off that list in January of 2017. On February the 5th, 2017, just 2 months into his sentence, he was found unresponsive in his cell. He put an end to his own sentence. He left a note on the bed, and a single phrase stood out: "I die in peace." Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.
Oh man. Well, I ain't gonna lie, rest in peace to bro. Bro was really a killer and an eater. He's Jeffrey Dahmer. Thank y'all. Stay 3000. I love y'all. On to the next one. Peace.
I got big packs coming on the way. I got big stacks coming out to save. I got Lil Max with me, he the way. It's a big gap between us in the game. In the next life, I'm trying to stay paid. When I die, put my